How's everyone doing? It has been years of time skip, like Shippuden style. Much. Nah, lots of things have been going on. It's been kind of fucking crazy. New place, new location, but also just so many events happening, and now we got the outbreak. Oh god, the panic. But funny enough, it did lead to understanding some really cool shit, which is what I'm here to bring up. It's took me certain steps of various events and various things leading up to it. And I could go even further, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to go even further on next channeling sessions, which is a thing that started. I mean, channeling's just easy thing for me now, and whoever doesn't necessarily know, it's like receiving blocks of information over and over and over, and it's really hell. I'll explain it at another point. Main thing is, let's just say that kind of practice has led to acquiring a kind of information that's really fucking useful, especially in this day and age. And it's been interesting because it's been like continuously asking and asking and asking questions, just trying to discover a tad bit more. You guys know I was doing a bit of inner introspection, going into motivation, doing all sorts of things, and eventually just continuously, eating the next material, figuring things out, and going through that motion. And it's been cool. Like every bits and nuggets helped getting a bit more. Like it was like, how deep is the rabbit hole in a sense? And it went up to a point where information just started just pouring in, like channeling wise as well. So it kind of cross referenced both. What I ended up understanding, and something that I just want to bring out, is this aspect that we ain't our fucking brain. And that's the coolest thing that you can figure out. What do I mean? You're not your brain. Well, it's simple. The brain, the mind, see it like a hard drive, like a computer hard drive. It's got memories, it's got definitions, it's got ideas, patterns, programs. But the thing is, when you go back to when you were born, you were on zero blank hard drive, mostly because you didn't have any of that. On your birth, you straight up had a combination of both your parents' hard drive and the operating system around, the society you're born with. But honestly, as a whole, we didn't have these thoughts. We had a blank hard drive when being born. You were a baby. That's it. That's all. You didn't have any of that. So you also understand the fact that you didn't necessarily choose any of those thoughts, and frankly, you didn't necessarily choose any of those values to a certain degree. You would just, again, blank hard drive and then given, done, take that. Another thing to notice is also is you can listen to your thoughts. Some people will tell me that they can't, and I'll ask them, okay, well, if you could, what would it sound like? Then they just blurt something out, and it's like, okay, well, you can listen to your thoughts. Usually it's your own voice, but the thing is, when you start understanding that, wait a second, you can listen to them, so you're not them, because they wouldn't be able to observe themselves. Think about it this way: the mind is, let's say, having judgment on things on the exterior, but it wouldn't be able to see itself having that judgment. See what I mean? There's got to be an exterior point of view to see that judgment. Hell, you can even interject on that judgment, adding another voice on top of it, and you're doing an interjection. Then voila, you kind of start noticing, wait a second, what's up? And yeah, it becomes like, oh wait, what? And there's multiple patterns, let's say habits that you have right now that you don't necessarily want, and you can start looking at how the hard drive would pop up a memory, a repetition of it, over time, over years. But when you consciously choose it now, fully understanding you're not the hard drive, you're not that repetition, well, you wouldn't necessarily choose that. Same goes with certain thoughts or certain ideas or certain comparisons or certain feelings. So you start kind of seeing what's going on here. And it's not that you're dumb, of course not. It's just that we were never really taught that we weren't the hard drive, we weren't the mind nor the body. We also had the soul, and that's the main controller and all that. That's your player one controller, because when you start understanding a bit more of the interaction between mind, body, soul, then things become a tad bit more interesting, because you're not attached to the definitions of the hard drive. You're not attached to those memories. You're not attached to those, to how you define things, both yourself and everyone else around. You're intrigued, you're curious, and you're not necessarily looking into it with hold. You're kind of just fully open to look into it because you're not attached to it. You get that. And what kind of gets funky is you also understand in a general loose way how it kind of works for others in a way, because fully understanding there are certain things you did not, there's certain habits, patterns, and ways of thinking you did not necessarily choose, and how they happen, they just happen. Here's your hard drive, here's this on a repetition. And of course there's various stories depending on the person, there's various contexts, but oftentimes it's not necessarily taken by choice. So here's the little sneaky thing: the mind will try to guilt you into thinking that it was your choice. And this is where, the whole anxiety thing starts kicking in, because oftentimes when too attached to the mind, you start thinking that you're all the thoughts that it says, you're all the judgment that it says, and all that crap, or all the methods that it sees you, everything that it thinks is possible for you, and all that. But hey, that's just hard drive. That's just repeating what's been seen, observed in the past. It's not you in the current now. So upon that understanding, it's like, whoa, wow, yeah. And you start noticing how, again, a lot of people do not necessarily choose. And it happens. We didn't get it. This is the cyclical nature of it all. Understanding what consciousness is, like the soul consciousness, you want to give any kind of terms, it's all good. Because at the end of the day, we're no longer playing Babel's Tower. We kind of all start to understand, okay, we have multiple definitions around the world. That shit is super granular, but we can all connect to the aspect of the feeling. And as a base, it always comes down to this aspect of doing onto the other what you would want them to do onto you. It's like natural, It's like, okay, well, what am I thinking about this person? Well, fuck this person. Would I want someone else to think about me that way? Not really. Okay, so change. It's like it becomes very basic and natural, and you're like, okay. And you also understand how some people are still stuck in the hard drive. So it's interesting because the more you dive into that, you kind of have this semi-exploration of both, okay, what's my hard drive? What's everything in my hard drive? Because it becomes curious. You're not shy from looking at it. Now you're just, okay, looking at it, not being attached to it. And then there's also an aspect of further and further understanding of general context for everyone else, not specifics. The specific is way too granular to each and every one of us, meaning every event will never have the same best friend in high school, we'll never have the same favorite pizza, we'll never have the same trip at the beach over whatever. We'll never have that. That's super granular, but we can get a general concept, a general idea, a general definition that we can all connect on. And, doing onto the others as you would want them to do onto you is one of those basic concepts. There's various other concepts, and you know what? I'll set up maybe some audio lists just to go into more understandings of these complexities, because right now you guys already got the golden key. You're not your hard drive, and you're basically the soul holding, the controller of these things. You're observing them, you're looking at them, you're changing them, you're selecting. You always had control. It's just figuring out how you had control, and basically understanding you're not your brain, and then saying, okay, well, what do I want to change? Done. And even when it comes to resentment, that you'll clear that shit. Why? Because one, you're not the hard drive, and then two, you understand if you had the habit because of whatever happened then that was given by person XYZ, how do you think they got the habit? Same fucking thing, cyclical. And what's really cool is 2020, we're at this point where we kind of understood, wow, one, we asked so many questions about these things that we kind of got so many open philosophies and various indications. Like, just the fact that we're able to pull in this information as fast as we can with the internet without people fighting each other to say, my method's right, is like fucking awesome, because we finally have, again, a convergence of information to finally get these kind of understandings. Another thing is having access to channeling. A lot more people are getting into that and are able to do that, and either for themselves or for everyone else, including I. Like, it just seems to happen very naturally, and it's something that I just seem to do, which is really free flowing and natural. So at one point, I just had to decide, okay, well, put it as general and basic as you can when you receive it, and then you'll just keep going with the refinement, which is what's going to be posted down below. A couple bit more refinement. And what I mean by refinement is, since you already got the basic, knowing that you're not your brain, the rest is just refining, having a bit more clarities on certain ideas and concepts, such as one thing, okay, that you can literally use as a soul is we often demigrate it by giving it the word imagination, but it's mostly because the common word in terminologies doesn't really explain the entirety of what we can do with this. It's actually really super fucking powerful. And there's just like the athletes, Olympian athletes, how they use repetition and visualization to actually excel their performance. We can pull this shit off at any point, and it's wonderful because you just, again, once your brain, you're cleared, you're no longer having any kind of pop-ups from your brain. Well, then you can literally dive into those zones and kind of ask, okay, how would it feel to be at this point? How would it feel to be doing this? And it becomes so much more fun. You also fully get into a zone where you understand your piece of it all counts. Your very existence counts, because it impacts people. Your very existence impacts people, literally, just you being there. And that goes with the unique, granular combination of what you've got there. Of course, all of it kind of brings this aspect of learning further and further about balance and non-duality, which gets to be key because the mind loves to be one way or another. And that's the mind. It does its best to keep you safe from its hard drive and whatever it had in its past. But the thing is, you don't create the future out of the past. In that way, by repeating the past, you just create the future. You ask yourself, what do you want, and just continuously focusing on it, not letting any kind of bullshit thoughts get in the way. There's a bit of a practice to it, and again, I'll add it in the section. Feel free to give whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. It's all about this aspect of fully knowing and understanding that you're not your brain, sharing it with other people, and kind of just realize more and more people understanding this. What does it do? Well, less reactionary content, meaning people are going to be much less reactionary because they'll be like, oh wait, why am I reacting? Would I want someone else to react that way? Or would I want someone else to label me in the same way that I label that person to react? And it's a very quick, again, clarity at the bottom below, because to a certain degree you're going to have to train. You practice. It's something that we all have naturally, but once you practice even more and you make it consciously understandable for yourself, and you experience with it or have some experiments with it, then it's just okay. You point what's next. It's kind of like this aspect of knowing you're not a hard drive. You're free to go in there and have that inner inquiry and go deeper, and you'll know yourself up to a point where you just pinpoint whatever you freaking love, and knowing how you love to do it because you took that time to ask yourself those questions. It's like the why question, why it's so important, because you keep developing off the why question. You keep understanding and knowing more on the subject by continuously asking why. And all those are nuances that you're finding, you're discovering, and you're creating at the same time. So oftentimes it doesn't necessarily come from the mind, but sometimes it does. You basically feel around that concept. Anyway, you've got most of the gist of it at this point, and the rest is basically you giving it all a shot, you testing things out, you going and doing that inner work. And I tell you, it literally kind of puts you in a different state. You you're much more accurate with how you respond. You're much more accurate with how you perceive things because you took the time to look into it. You didn't necessarily attach yourself to the hard drive, but you were curious enough to kind of just play around with it. Hey, one of the cool things that you can kind of do, again, don't diminish it by calling it imagination because you can do some cool shit with it, is you visualize things like a VR suit, like Ready Player One. Do the VR experiment. Set up your VR suit and everything, and then just enter your own room and start looking at the various, pop-ups that you have from the mind whenever you look at something. And notice you're not really attached to those. You can change the values at any point. You can basically change anything at any point, because one, from the hard drive, it's repetition, so you can just repeat something else and have that different output. Where it gets really interesting or really important is also noticing that your thoughts affect your mood. So depending on how you think and how the hard drive thinks, or how the hard drive thinks, I should say, then your moods are affected. So if you have a certain view of yourself that you didn't necessarily choose, well, your mood is still affected. So at that point, take the controller and just do it. That's where it kind of gets to be key as well. It's like, okay, you're feeling in a bad mood. Okay, what are you thinking about? Well, I'm thinking about this, that, and that. Okay. Well, you think about that. Stop thinking about that. Think about something else. You have the control. You have the controller. It's just realizing, okay, well, one, I didn't know, and then two, how often has this other thing been repeated? So, again, for me, it just brings me into this place of just, holy shit, this is fucking awesome. Because when it came to various activities, and how I was able to make the bridge was going between art and then things I wanted to accomplish in life. And when I started noticing the way I was thinking, my thoughts, the mind thoughts occurred when I was drawing, how critical at times it was, how sometimes it was focusing on what responses are going to be, or how it should look, trying to pit against a standard. And the funniest part is it was all mind. Because early childhood drawing didn't have any of those kind of thoughts. And when switching to that different mode when it came to drawing, it's just fun. You just play. You play, you shape, you mold. You're the sculptor in the clay. There's no thoughts about, oh, I need to have it a one way or another. That's mind. And upon, again, noticing the shift in momentum and how it felt, it's like, oh shit, wow, that was simple. What the fuck? Can I apply that to everything else in life? In a way, yeah. But again, all of it is balance and clarification. So there's going to be more stuff downstairs, down below. Feel free to give whatever you want, but share this with people. Get more people to understand that they're not their brain, they're not their hard drive, they're not their memories, they're not their reactions. They have entire control over it to the degree that they want to give themselves time to. This is why going in these moments of self-reflection, meditation is one way, clearing out thoughts or listening to your thoughts, inner introspection. There's multiple ways, and I'll see if I can list many of them, but you dive into that, your personal response, you control it. And guess what? Naturally, what comes back reflects the same thing. If you're not a douche, you're not going to get treated like one. But interestingly enough, as you share this and help people just break free of whatever fucks with them thought-wise, then you'll start noticing just a lot more people getting in tune with themselves and not needing other people to be a certain way, right? When you really think about it and you really consider the remaining type of mentalities that way, certain people or organizations and such that are still that way, needing, like, I need to dictate this country, I need to impose on another. Well, you start understanding how lackful that is, because it's kind of like insinuating that, okay, well, this is the only way I can be happy. I need to impose on others. And you kind of, again, it's a cyclical nature of things. When you look at dictators, cyclical aspect of things, that kind of stuff just diminishes because eventually it's like get with the program. You look back at history when it came to times where we were having wars just for land and such, or we were having war just for minor little insult to a country or a kingdom, or we had family rivalries, or family vendettas, I should say. Again, things started calm, cyclically, just started dismissing. No more duels in the street. So it's that same kind of mentality. When you understand that as humanity evolves and as consciousness grows and the soul, people connecting with their souls, become much more frequent, well, then there's this reflection aspect of, okay, well, I wouldn't want to be treated that way. I'm not going to treat someone else that way. It's going to be that simple. And this is where we're at, in a cool way. So I'm fucking glad. It's great because it's like, okay, what do I want to work on? And especially with this channeling thing, where it's just pouring and pouring and pouring. And it's like, okay, it doesn't need to be perfect. Those were all stuff I had, ideals I had in the mind. Doesn't need to be perfect. If the message is understood, that's perfect. If it's not, then okay. Certain things work with certain people, certain videos, methods, and techniques, and that's one thing to keep in mind. Always keep in mind. You may not necessarily get one thing from one person or one method, but you keep going down that trail, keep checking various other materials, and it's going to resonate. You're going to find your own unique cue that works with the granularity of your own experience. At that point, just play, skyrocket, the time of where we had ideas of there's only one religion, one philosophy, one method of doing things, one way of, let's say, attaining enlightenment or something like that. That's kind of gone, because we're now converging and saying, whoa, we're all saying the same thing, but we have different practices. And understanding you're a unique person, you're a unique being, so you have unique preferences, and understanding what those unique preferences what they are by going inside the hard drive, well, then you make your life easier. And guess what? As your life is easier and your reactions are less and less, and you're much more in the flow of what you love, because that's what gets you, then everyone else kind of benefits, because you're naturally in the flow and loving everything that's happening. So that's that. Just send it out to the world, get people to just ponder this, think about this, don't get distracted by notification. Close the screen, think about it, sit down and think, okay, how am I not the hard drive? And just start detaching from it, and you'll start seeing, like, there's the rest is clarity. But already from that detachment, any of the problems that you kind of think you have right now, that's all mind. Well, you start looking at it and going, okay, well, the mind think that this is a problem. You start detaching from it. You don't take the baggage and the weight of all that folder that the mind's trying to pop up at you. So the rest is clarity is going to be at the bottom. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. I'm glad I'm able to bring this message to people. I'm glad I'm able to just help people with that, because it's been one heck of a question, and I'm glad I was able to get that answer and just getting more and more and more. And it's kind of nutty, but fuck it, I'm getting used to it. So it's cool. 2020, people. It's going to be fucking amazing.